Welcome to Tell Me Your Story, New Paradigms for a New World. I'm Richard Dugan, your host. I thank you so much for joining us here on the program. We come your way every Sunday at 7 a.m. and 7 p.m., Monday mornings at 1 a.m., Wednesdays at 9 a.m., and then Monday through Friday from 8 to 9 a.m. We stream at those times at richarddugan.com, and we podcast at SoundCloud, iTunes, TuneIn Radio, Spotify, Stitcher, Player FM, Blueberry, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, and many other locations. And we are also on YouTube where you can watch these interviews. We hope that you will. We also ask that if you can support what we're doing financially, we have a PayPal account. It is there for your security as well as ours. And we also ask that you spend some time going within in that quiet, calm, peaceful place and listening to that still small voice. And with all of that being said, we are now going to introduce to you our very special guest here on the program. She is an author, among other things, and she is going to share with us a very interesting story from a book entitled, and this is an interesting one, I worked on this quite a bit for pronunciation, Pivotry. It's a new word, ladies and gentlemen, in the 21st century. It's the art of shifting, and she shares her experiences with single motherhood, and we'll get all of that information from her. Her name is Trish Yan. Trish, thank you so much for joining us here on the program.
Hi, Richard. Thank you so much for having me.
It's such a pleasure to be talking with you, especially considering the fact that there are probably a lot of people out there who are going to relate in one fashion or another. As a matter of fact, as I was reading through some of the materials, I'm going, has she been following? Does she have a camera in here somewhere and that she's been following me? And, because that's awful close to, I'm dealing with some of the other, no, I'm not a single mother, but, but the challenges that many are facing these days, it is, I'm going to say it is quite frustrating because we can't, it's like we're in quicksand. I was going to say traversing sand dunes, and not really getting anywhere because over every hill, there's another one and then another one. But in this case, it's like quicksand and we're being pulled down by almost like the weight of these challenges. And you had some of these, but you overcame them to actually create your own company, your own business. And you have a website called TRYAdvisors.com. Is the TRY an acronym or is it just, and we'll get into that and so forth. Is that at all an acronym?
Initials. Yeah, those are my initials.
Okay.
TRY.
Okay.
Yeah. My real initials are Pray, but that's a little bit funny to use. And so I just decided to go with Try.
Okay. Well, we are certainly glad you're here. All right. Well, let's start with the creation of this new word, which I have a funny feeling maybe one day may wind up in Webster's.
Pivotry.
Pivotry, because it's sort of the the combination of pivoting and, am I wrong, poverty?
No, pivoting and my initials Try. So Pivotry.
Okay. I'm missing all of the clues.
Yeah. And it's also the art of, right? So anything with a try, there's poetry, there's pivotry, it is the art of. And so my sister actually came up with this idea during COVID and she's like, you should name it Pivotry. And I said, that's not a word, but let me start using it as a word. And then I used it for my book title.
All right. Well, let's talk about this because even pivoting, now we acknowledge that change is the constant in the universe. And I'm going to take a shot here and say that pivoting is how we not react, because I have a feeling we don't want to react to the changes because odds are it'll only sink us deeper into the quicksand. We have to learn how to respond or act in a fresh way that isn't bogged down by our past experiences. And, well, I did it this way before, so I'll do it again this way.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think it's really about taking what's happening to you, but really looking at it through a different lens and knowing that whatever challenge you're going through, it's temporary. But then the key piece there is really thinking about, okay, then if I'm not comfortable, if I'm going through this challenge, where and how do I want to feel when this challenge is over? Or what would I want my life to be like instead? And what are these things that I'm wishing for as opposed to instead of what's happening to me right now? Right. But it's being able to be objective and looking at yourself through a different lens or from, I don't know, a million feet away and saying, this must be happening to me for a reason. I should be, maybe there's a teaching moment here and maybe I should be learning from all of this. Or is this a pattern that keeps happening to me because my response is always the same? Right? So what is the lesson here? What is the teaching moment? And then pivoting to what you think or how you feel is going to make it better. But it doesn't happen overnight. It happens when in divine timing, when it's all supposed to happen. But until you learn that particular lesson, it doesn't really happen.
You say that we're all here to learn from each other. Right now, though, what I'm finding is that for a lot of folks, what they're learning is that I want things my way, and I'll do whatever it takes to get it my way. That's not pivoting, and that's not being in divine right, as the phrase goes, divine right order, or divine right timing, if you will.
Right.
How do we, go ahead. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, how do we begin that process?
What process of identifying which direction to go?
Well, I guess the first part of the process has more to do with recognizing that I've been doing the same thing over and over again, insanity, i.e. the definition thereof, and I want more. I want more love in my life. I want more community in my life. I want more abundance in my life. I want more prosperity in my life. The list goes on.
Yeah. So the first thing the first thing I would do here was I'm the queen of lists, right? So I would sit there and make a list of, if you're looking for your ideal partner, if you're looking for abundance, what are some of these things that can help you out of it? Right? But before you even make a list, instead of getting yourself into the twirl of your challenge or whatever you're going through, the first thing I always do is go into the space of gratitude. Right? Because that gives you a very different insight. And it changes, it clears out the negativity. So negativity and gratitude can't ever be in the same space. So the minute you go into gratitude and then go from gratitude into deeper appreciation, that just sets you up on a totally different path altogether. But if you're spiraling and focusing on, I don't have any money, I can't pay my bills, I can't do this, my life is terrible. Well, what are you attracting? You're attracting all of that, right? You're attracting the lack, you're attracting the victimization, the unworthiness. And so all of that is happening to you over and over and over again. But if you go into the place of gratitude and say, you know what, right now I can't pay my bills, but thank you for X, Y, and Z. Thank you that I have a job. Thank you that my son is healthy. Thank you that I'm healthy enough to go to work. And then after you do that, right, then you say, well, then how do I go into even a greater idea of what my life should be? It's the visualization and the want and the dreaming that takes you to another space.
All right. So one of the other things that you talk about is gleaning from other stories of courage and bravery and so forth. So this program would facilitate that process for some folks because they will hear, for example, your story, which I would love for you to dive into as far as prior to that catalytic moment that said, I need to do something different.
Mhm.
That's going to help other people. That's going to say, oh, well, she really had it rough. I don't have it that rough. I must, I must be able to make that shift too. I must be able to pivot. So talk
Mhm.
to us about how all of this began for you, because obviously it came about even long before you became a single mother.
Yeah. So I came, I'm first generation immigrant, moved to this country in 1985 at 11 years old. And back then, if you flew under 12 years old, your fare was half off. And so my parents decided, okay, the two younger children can be under 12, and then we'll bring in the two. So, but we left everything at home, left
Mhm.
everything in the Philippines, started from scratch. Right. We had the Salvation Army couch, the TV with a tin foil, that was attached to the antenna to hopefully get some signal. We were the family that got, the Thanksgiving meal donated by the church.
Mhm.
But what did we leave in the Philippines? I left nannies and drivers and maids and laundry women. You know, my sister and
Mhm.
I each had a nanny. So we had a very different life. So you come to this country and you have to start from scratch. And your mom's cleaning houses on the weekends just to make ends meet. So it was a very, very different time, but I was also much younger.
Mhm.
And so it didn't allow me, it just kind of said, okay, well, this is our life right now, very different from how I grew up, but we're just going to have to make it work. And so the work ethic and the drive to not be poor and to not live this hardship of a life was already ingrained in me. But I didn't know how to get out of it at that young age. But I kept paying attention to what are things that are happening to me, what are challenges that keep showing up that I need to pay attention to. But it didn't happen until, in my early 20s when I was in the States, had to go back to the Philippines because I didn't have my papers.
Mm.
And then I ended up staying there. My mom was dying of cancer, but I couldn't come back to the States. And then I got pregnant. So then,
Mm.
so that changes. And so then I was able to come back to the States. The father, this, I just don't call him the father, I call him the sperm donor. But anyway, he sent me a text at 5 months pregnant saying, sorry, I can't deal with this. And so I already knew I was going to be a single mom, but I didn't know how I was going to make ends meet. Right. But that's what I prayed for. I said, Lord, if I am going to be a single mom, you're going to get this guy out of my life early so I can you know, just have a clear path and kind of know what's ahead of me.
Mhm.
It's like I come back, my visa gets approved. I come back to the States December of 2000. My mom dies a week and a half later.
Mm. Wow.
And I'm 8 months pregnant. I have $1,000 in my pocket and I'm a single mom. And so mom dies on a Monday around 2:14 in the afternoon. Exactly 4 weeks later, I give birth on a Monday at 2:14 p.m. But my son was due on February 14, but instead he was born at 2:14. So there's already synchronicities, right? There have always been synchronicities in my life, but this one was a new one. And as a single mom, a new mom whose mother just died after her 10-year battle of cancer, I had no tools. I had nothing. I didn't have a job. I was on welfare. I got assistance from the county for the delivery, for his doctor's visits, for his formula. I didn't have two pennies to rub together. So I literally had nowhere else to go but up. But I didn't know where to even do that or how to even do that.
Mm.
But then well, I did. I sat there on the floor of the bedroom where my mom had just died. And I'm sitting there with no job saying to myself, if only I could have a nanny. And then I'm thinking to myself, who the hell do you think you are, lady? Hoping for a nanny and you don't even have a job. But what happens a year and a half later, I get a job, I move into the city in DC. I have a live-in nanny in my basement.
Hmm.
You know, so it's
Wow.
like, okay, well, you manifest these things, you think about these things, you don't really honestly think that. I didn't think, oh, I wanted a nanny. I didn't think I deserved one. I didn't think the universe was going to bring me one. But when it's aligned for you and it's supposed to happen to you, it just happens, whether you wish it or not, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so there I was working as a single mom, making 30,000 a year. And my whole income went to his daycare. I don't know how I made ends meet back then, but it worked.
Mm.
So it just kept grinding. I just kept trying to survive.
Wow.
And every year I would sit there and write, I hope that I wish I could pay, or I wish I could make this much. I wish I could pay off all my bills. I hope I could do this. So I made lists, right? I always made a list. I want to do this. I want to make this, not knowing that these things would actually happen. Then you'd go back a year later, be like, whoa, that happened, and this happened, and this happened, and this happened. And I said, there might be something to this, writing down your wishes or manifesting or visualizing or whatever that was.
Mm-hmm.
But I just continued. I was just in survival mode. It was a good journaling, and listing was a good way for me to just empty out my thoughts and just put it on paper and release it to the universe. And little do you know, my son just graduated from college at 23 years old, summa cum laude from Northeastern University, and I provided his whole private school education by myself.
Mm.
From private elementary school, a boarding school, one of the top 15 boarding schools in the country. And then I paid for his college education out of my own pocket as a single mom with no parents to support, and not a dollar or a penny or a peso from that guy. Right?
Mm-hmm.
So you just, we can all get out of our own way if there is a purpose. And my purpose and my why was my son and his education. And so if I hadn't had my son or hadn't given birth or wasn't a single mom, I don't think I would have been that driven to do what I did. And my whole motivation was his education. We moved to this country for our education. My mom sacrificed, my parents sacrificed everything for our education. So I vowed to do the same thing. Every 80%, 90% of my paycheck went to his education. I scraped by. But as long as I could provide that education for him, that was my why. Right? And I think the first thing is, in my book, I talk about really identifying what your why is. And Simon Sinek has a great book that's called Start With Why. So when you have your why, that is the direction for your life. That is the direction for your career, for your personal life, for anything that you want. Because then there's a purpose.
Mm-hmm. Do you find that sometimes the answers that we're looking for are within the questions that we're asking? I've heard that phrase used often.
Of course. Yeah. Because before you even ask the question, you already know what the answer is, but you just don't want to admit it. Sometimes, right? Sometimes we already know what we need to be doing. And so as a coach, that is my job, to get people out of their way, to get them a little bit uncomfortable, to get to a better place. Because we all need help from other people. I have my own coach. As a coach, I have my own coach, because otherwise, then, I need somebody else to hold me accountable and to look at my issues and problems objectively, and then they give me guidance.
I was just going to ask who, it's just kind of like when we're talking with our doctor, our dentist, and so forth. So who's your doctor? Who's your dentist? that kind of thing. So who do you, I mean, you've mentioned one individual who's, one person's book, but is there an individual, you don't necessarily have to name them per se, but do you have someone that you go to when maybe you are, because I would venture you still have those moments, I'll call them instances. They may not happen often, but we're all still human, no matter how far along in our process we're going, that you talk with, that you seek advice and counsel and guidance from.
Sure. Yeah, of course. I have my own coach, but I went through different iterations of it. I started with a therapist. Said, that didn't really work for me, right? That's just not for me. It works for a lot of people. And that's always the first person I would suggest to anybody who's going through anything. After the therapist, I went with a woman who taught me tapping.
Oh
So
yeah.
she helped me through a lot of, tapping and a lot of trauma, a lot of PTSD that I had from other things. And then now my coach is a combination of a spiritual guide and an energy healer. But then I have mentors in business, and colleagues and other really strong women who I go to, depending on what the issue is. And so I have a village of people who we all need a village, right? We all need a village. We all need that support system. We can't do things by ourselves. We all need everybody to kind of support us and hold us when we need it in different times and for different things.
I remember when my dear friend, my best friend from grade school, high school, and college, he called me. Oh, it was after we moved here to Santa Barbara. It was probably a good 10 years ago. He has since passed on, but he called me telling me that he was living in his car. He didn't have a job. He was trying to come up with this, that, and the other thing, and wondered if I could help him out. And we're one of those families that's living paycheck to paycheck, so I really didn't have much. And the only advice that I could offer him, or the only thing I could offer him, was advice. He was living in Phoenix, which was both our hometowns. That's where I was born and raised. I said, you have a network of people, you have a community there that you have created over the years that you and I have known each other. And you need to go to one of them and just ask them, even if it's just for a short term, until you can get yourself back on your feet, if there's a way that they might be able to put you up. And he actually found one, and they did put him up, and he did get himself back up on his feet, and he got all kinds of different jobs and so forth until his passing last May. And there was a part of me that felt bad that I couldn't do more. I wish that I'd had the wherewithal. And that's part of the reason why I sit here and I say, I want more. But I'm doing my utmost not to come from a position of lack. And it's like, I'm happy where we are, not only living, but even having what we need when we need it. There's a story I won't go into right now that kind of elucidates that, but having the wherewithal that we need when we need it, to do the things that we want to do, and being grateful. I am grateful that I have cell phone service, and I have electricity at the house, and internet that we can watch the programs that we enjoy. And again, the list goes on, as you mentioned before. And not wanting to be in that position of living from paycheck to paycheck, wanting to move forward, move upward and onward, so that if somebody does call me and say, hey, I need some help, that I can do that, even if it's just a little bit. I've had people who have supported us over the years when there have been those challenging times, and I'm grateful for their support, their assistance, and their advice. My mother's, who is still alive, has done that through advice and other means. So what you're saying is that we really need, it seems to me like one of the first steps too is, or maybe in conjunction, is creating that network, creating that community of people. That
Yeah.
you don't just create it for you, you create it so you can be there if there's something that you can do to help them. It's a
Right.
it's a balance in the universe, so to speak, right?
Right. Because it's about giving, right? So when you give, it's about really offering. When you help that guy, you gave him advice. That's all you could give at the time, but that changed his life. And so changing that perspective of, I wish I could have given him more, you did. You gave him a lot, right? So it's always coming from a place of abundance, however small, however big that is. But if we can have the mindset of abundance, then that is a really huge stepping stone to always start from.
Yeah.
But then the key there is when you give, you should also be open to receiving. And so that's something that took me a really, really long time to learn. Because when you're in a room full, how many people here want to give? Who loves to give? Everybody raises their hand, right? Who here, then you say, who here loves to receive? There's all of a sudden, oh, I don't like to receive. But the thought behind there is, if you don't receive, then how can you continue to give? Right? So if you have the law of receptivity, if you're open to receiving, then more grace falls on you. But if you're closing yourself off from receiving and you're giving, you cannot live on an exhale.
You know, that's interesting that you would use that example, because in a previous interview I was talking with someone about that, and I mean, and it really struck me, because they said, you do realize that there is, as long as you are on this planet, from the time you arrive until the time you leave, there is balance. And what they were referring to is the breath. When you come into this world, you inhale that first breath. And you then do that throughout your life. Inhale and exhale, inhale and exhale. However, at the end, when you leave, it's your last exhale. And so there's balance.
I love
There's
that.
been the exact same number, shall we say, of inhales as exhales. We're talking today about Pivotry, the art of shifting. We are talking, of course, with Trish Yan, founder of TRYAdvisors. It's a coaching and consulting firm that partners with clients to transform their lives and amplify their business. And she works with clients to define their personal narrative and create lives they have always dreamed of. And her passion is helping people live out their dreams. Oh my God, are you still following me? One of our slogans is giving people choices and knowledge of those choices to help make their dreams come true. And we're giving people a new choice here, which is, of course, TRYAdvisors.com, the website, as well as the book that we're talking about, Pivotry, the Art of Shifting, as we continue here on Tell Me Your Story. I'm Richard Dugan, your host, and it is really a pleasure to have you with us, Trish, to talk about these things. Now, in your book, you and again, I ask these questions from the position of someone who, whether I have or have not, a position of someone who has never heard of you before, never heard of your book before, but is intrigued by what you are saying. So are there steps that I need to take that you outline in your book that will help me? And can you give me a couple of those to kind of get me going until I can get to my phone or my computer and go to TRYAdvisors.com, and that is TRYAdvisors, plural.com. So can you give us any steps?
Sure. Yeah. And as I said earlier, it's really about, the first thing is to really know your why, right? Despite whatever challenge you're going through, knowing your purpose and why you're on this earth and what you have to do and the difference you have to make in people's lives is going to propel you into a different direction. And that's the first step to get you out of your own way. when you have something or someone else that you're focused on, that's a huge amplifier for you. Right. And then the next bit there. And so it's really thinking about, okay, what is, and that's not a 1 second exercise. That's something that you need to really, really think about. Our children, our spouses, are all those things. Yes, there are obvious reasons, but a lot of people who don't have children, who don't have spouses, they can think of other reasons, other things that could be their why, right? The next thing I would do is to live in gratitude and appreciation, like we talked about earlier. Whenever you're going through some kind of stress or negativity, pivoting away from the negativity or the stress is living in gratitude and appreciation. And then the next step is actually being clear about what it is that you want. How do you want your life to be? How do you want to feel? What difference do you want to make in people's lives? What fun things do you want? This is an opportunity to really allow yourself to dream big, to really, really dream big. And when I was at the bottom, when I had no money, didn't have anything, one thing that kept me going was my why, my son, and really dreaming big and knowing, you know what, this is going to happen to me one day. I don't know when, but it is going to happen. So really and then it's funny to go back and say, you know what, I've been in real estate for over 20 something years. And the first house that I showed, one of the first few houses, I said, you know what, I want to live like this. I want to have an open kitchen, opens to the living room, overlooks the pool. I'd been living in row houses, really small spaces, renting. A few years ago, I moved in finally with my husband now, and I said, this is exactly what I asked for 20 years ago. An open kitchen, open to the family room, overlooking the pool. But when I thought of that 23 years ago, I had no idea how that was going to happen. But I knew that's what I wanted. Right? So I was super, super clear. And in going back to my lists, I was really clear about what were the things I wanted to achieve. One was to write a book. Another one was to have my own business. Other one was to pay for my son's education, right? All these things happened. So that's really about allowing yourself to dream, dream big. I talk about really thinking about what your perfect day is. And as crazy as it is, as far-fetched as it is from your current reality, allow yourself to go there. It's a really fun exercise. And really pay attention to every single detail that you want and visualize it and feel it, and it'll soon happen to you. And everybody's definition of success or abundance is different. Right? But you have to really know and experience it and feel it and say, this is really what's meant for me. This has been popping up. This is something in the back of my mind, but I haven't allowed myself to go there. So when you allow yourself to go there, just go there, right? And then the next part about that is be open to receiving. We've talked about this, the law of receptivity. You cannot live on an exhale. So once you open yourself and say, you know what, I'm a giver. I help people. I service. I do all these things for everybody. How come nothing happens to me? Because for me, I was blocked. I was in survival mode all the time. Oh, I can do this myself. I'm a single mom. Nobody can help me. I can do this. People wanted to help. I said, no, thanks. I got it. So what was I doing? I was blocking everything from coming in. Why? Because I had that storyline that I'm in survival mode and I'm the only one who can help myself. And so repeating that storyline over and over and over again blocked me from receiving whatever was meant for me.
You know, the law of reciprocity is interesting because it has to be balanced. There cannot be a giver without a receiver and vice versa. And what you're talking about is where, okay, the giver wants to give you something, you refuse it, you block it. However, the giver is not blocked nor blocking, ergo, the universe will keep it balanced for the giver.
Right.
But you, on the other hand, until you become unblocked, I find that interesting. And you know, the universe abhors a vacuum. It also abhors imbalance. It will allow it for a time, but things do end up getting back in balance. It's, what is it that, oh, what's the term I think it's chaos to order. It's along those lines, not exactly that, but along those lines. Imbalance is chaos. Balance is order. You know, when I think about the universe, for example, you know, it's just doing what it's doing. You know, there's no judgment there either.
No, there's never any judgment, right? It's just we add judgment onto things. We add resistance onto things. And so it's like the same thing. It's like if something great happens to us, I was raised to not celebrate. Oh, that's so sinful. That is so not Catholic if you're going to celebrate your success. Don't be boastful. Don't do this. Don't do that. But if you don't celebrate your success and don't put it out there, it's not going to come back to you. It's a wheel, right? What you put out comes back to you. So why don't you celebrate your successes so that you get more successes? More things happen to you.
Yeah. And I think that in that process of celebrating our successes, we have to recognize even the smallest successes. Sometimes we discount those and, oh, that's no big deal. There's no big deal. No. But it is a big deal. Yeah, it is a big deal to the universe.
All those small successes build up to one big success.
Yeah.
Right. And every small success we need to be grateful for. Every single thing. Before I get up in the morning, before I put my feet on the ground, I wake up and I think of 5 things that I'm grateful for before I even put my feet on the ground. At night, before I go to bed, I go through every hour of the day and I find one thing that I was grateful for in that hour. And sometimes there's lots, but it's that active exercise of always being grateful. Now, what happens is, go ahead, sorry.
I was just going to say, you mentioned, you know, being raised Catholic. So you have a spiritual foundation, shall we say. And as I mentioned at the beginning of the program, we encourage people to spend time going within to that quiet, peaceful, calm, still place and listening to that still, small voice. How important has that been for you as you have gone through your life, as you have come up, shall we say, from the bottom, and created all that you've created? And again, I know that you acknowledge that you were not alone in creating it. At the same time, it's okay if you take credit for doing so. But talk to us a little bit about the intuition factor.
Yeah, I think we all have it. We all have our intuition. As my grandmother said, I remember I was probably 6 or 7 years old, and she said to me, you have a gift. You have a really strong intuition. And until you practice that and acknowledge it, it's always going to be there. Right. But I believe that every single person has it. And it's just a matter of the awareness of it. But having been raised Catholic, that's all I knew. But then I started looking at other things because I was interested in other things. And so when I was in my early 20s, I joined this yoga group and I got into meditation. So I've been meditating for over 20 years. And I think meditation has really changed my life. The ability to go in, despite how hard it is to even meditate for 2 minutes, sometimes it's really, really hard. But the ability to go in and to connect with your deepest self, with your core, and to really sit in a quiet space is life-changing. Because the things that are swirling in your subconscious when you're quiet are allowed to come up. And that is your deepest self. Your subconscious and your core know exactly what you're meant to be doing. But all of the distractions of today, the news, our phones, you know, Zoom, all these things that we're pulled, takes away from that quiet, still space. And so just recently, I decided I have to get back to meditation. And you know what's funny is that last year was the biggest year of my life, right? I launched my book, I turned 50, I got married, and my son graduated from college. And in December, I was diagnosed with breast cancer.
Oh, wow.
So you're thinking, what else is supposed to happen, right? And my mom was diagnosed at 51, and I was diagnosed at 50. And that's where this meditation piece has been really, really essential for me and my healing and my and just being able to stay grounded, because otherwise I'd be a hot mess. But here we are. I started radiation yesterday. I'm, have it for a month every day. You just can't, you have to keep going. What else are you going to do?
I often, with the challenges that I've had over the last couple of years, in particular, mostly with people leaving, passing on. My father, my eldest sister, my best friend, my neighbor across the street from us back in Phoenix, who died at the age of 94. And, I say the list goes on, and it kind of does. I'm 63 years old, and there's a part of me that goes, and why are you surprised? You made a whole bunch of friends in those 63 years, and nobody, as your father told you, eat, drink, and be merry in moderation, because nobody gets out of this world alive. So what's your problem? But I kind of say the same thing to as you did with that and a few other things that have been going on. What next? On the health level, as you have shared, I finally got some insurance, and I had a physical, and my PSA was up, and now they want to check for prostate, possible prostate issues. I don't want to use the C word per se necessarily, but I'm sitting here thinking, well, wait a minute. Could a UTI have had anything to do with the elevated da-da-da? I mean, I start speculating. I'm not afraid. I mean, even if it did come down to, yeah, that's it. My father had it in his late 70s, had radiation, and he was done with it, and he lived to 91. So it's not like, it's not a death sentence or anything.
It's not anymore, right? It's really not. And for us, we have to stay on top of our health checkups and really be conscientious about it. And so mine was caught from just a routine mammogram.
Yeah.
But ladies and men, you just make sure you're going to your doctors on a regular basis. And so the way I turned this around was, you know what? Now I know exactly what's happening in my whole body. I had a CT scan, I had a bone scan. So now everybody knows what's happening. And so if that is not a gift, then I don't know what else is, right? But everyone says, oh, you're a coach, so this is easy for you. You can just, you could take your mindset and really kind of work through this. No, I'm human.
Yeah. Well, it's like my ophthalmologist back in Phoenix, when I went in because my vision was deteriorating, and, the cataracts are growing. And I says, well, what are we going to do? I mean, says, well, we can do one of two things. One is we can wait and see if they deteriorate, if they go away, which I thought was kind of silly because they were growing. He says, or we can put a lens implant. I said, okay. He says, I just want you to know you have a 50-50 chance of losing the sight in your one good eye. And I said, all right, well, let's do it. now rather than later, so that I can, if that were to happen, so I can start the adjustment process. And as many of our listeners know, I spent the early years of my career from 1979 to probably 85 or 2000, being amongst the blind and visually impaired. I even worked in a job in a warehouse with blind and visually impaired people. So it's not like this concept, if you will, is foreign to me. Yeah, there are adjustments and so forth, but thankfully that didn't happen. But I think that it goes back to the phrase that you uttered. What now? What's next kind of thing. And again, it's not, someone said to me just recently, one of our guests, Jonathan Goldman, said to me as I was sharing some of these things with him, and he said, just remember, every time a door is closed, another door opens. And I had to force myself to repeat that over and over again. And I told him that. I said, it actually has kind of helped. It just reminds me, with all of the challenges that I've been through in my 63 years of existence, which is nothing more than a puff of smoke in the grand scheme of things, I'm still here. I didn't die when those certain things came along.
Yeah. As you know, they say God only gives you as much as you can handle.
Right.
So again, despite how, even if you think, oh my God, I'm never going to survive this.
Yeah.
Well, God wouldn't have made it happen to you if he knew he couldn't survive it. So
I know I've made the comment with the observation by others that, oh yeah, well, these kinds of things, and even getting bullied in school like you were, all that kind of stuff, it builds character. And I would respond with, there's got to be an easier way to build character. Well, apparently not. That's not the way it works.
No, it's not the way it works. And we owe that to ourselves and to our children, adversity and hardship and challenges give you tools to survive in this life. And so, my son grew up without a father, and he watched me work every day. But what did that create in him? It created a drive, work ethic, appreciation, all these things. But there I was feeling guilty. Oh my God, my poor kid, he doesn't have a dad, but I couldn't do anything about it. But the outcome of who he is today created something pretty special.
Yeah. Just out of curiosity, what's his area of expertise? What is it that he wants to be now that he's gotten through his college education?
He is a writer, so he's a journalist. And he was just in this past summer, he was working for the San Francisco Chronicle as a food and wine reporting intern. So, and then during his, while he was in college, he was co-oping or doing a co-op at the Boston Globe. And so, so he loves to write, he loves food, he loves anything cultural. And so we'll just see. We're waiting to hear about a few places, so we'll see what happens next. But I'm not worried about my kid. He's got it. He'll figure it out.
My mother says the same thing about me, especially when I traveled back to Phoenix for my sister's memorial, and somehow I missed. I got all the way to the Sky Harbor, and I got to within, I think, 4 or 5 miles of my parents' house, and someone was supposed to pick me up, and they never showed up. And it wasn't because they weren't looking, but then my telephone died. My phone died. And I had a laptop with me, but then I realized that's not going to do me any good because I have no wireless service. My phone is dead. So I ended up walking those 4 miles with my suitcase and my laptop and so forth and so on. And when I checked the voicemails after I got the phone charged up, I'm listening to my mother, and she still sounded very calm. "Where are you, Richard? What's going on?" But the one thing she continued to tell my father, who was a little bit more concerned, was, he's very resilient. He'll turn up. He
Mhm.
always
Yeah.
does. And that's kind of what
Yes.
the universe is saying is, don't worry, you'll turn up again. You'll be
Mhm.
all right.
Yeah, everybody has resilience built in. They
Mhm.
just have to learn how to use it or
Yeah.
learn how to access it, right? So we all grew up differently. We all grew up with different parents. I was raised in the 70s, right? But the resilience piece has helped me through a lot of challenges through my life. And,
Yeah.
you know, for all that, I'm grateful. I'm grateful to my parents for bringing us here. And despite the challenges, it created resilience.
Yeah.
And it created, and it's now an interesting story. And hopefully, if I can just help one woman, one person change their life or pivot
Hmm.
and figure out, okay, I don't want this. I don't want to be living like this. I don't want to have this stress anymore. How can I pivot to make a life create a better life for myself?
Yeah. Pivotry, the art of shifting. And Trish R. Yan is my guest, and she has a website we will be linked to. It is TRYAdvisors.com. We certainly hope that you will take advantage of the opportunity that is available to you to get a copy of the book and get your life on the road, so to speak. This book will inspire you to be bold, live with purpose, and live for your biggest dreams. And I think that one of the wonderful aspects of gratitude that you might want to take into consideration that we've sort of talked about is, obviously, if you are listening to this program and you look back on your life and all of its challenges, you're still here because you're listening to this program. Be grateful for those challenges because they've made you who you are. My father was, in the last few years of his life, was not real happy from the standpoint that he did not feel that he really played a significant role in our lives. And the memorial that we held for him last last March, and this was not choreographed in any way, shape, or form by his remaining children. The theme for that memorial could have been, "We wouldn't be the people we are if it hadn't been for you in our lives, Dad, Grandpa,
Mhm.
great grandpa." um, that was I would be hopeful that he knows that now, that he made us who we are, not just if in the physical, but beyond that. And I tried to share that with him to let him know, hey, thank you. Thank you for everything that you've given me, not just my life, but the experiences with you, the lessons that you've taught me, and so forth. And I would think that you probably look at your family as well, your parents in quite the same way. But I know there are some folks who would have difficulty with that because maybe there were some mm, bigger challenges or traumas, if you will, that
Mhm.
they went through within the family that would make it hard for them to utter those words of thank you.
Right. Yeah. And so that's when you have to identify, right? Is that my story to hold on to? Is that my lane that I need to be on? Or
Mhm.
is this the lane? So, yeah, we have those attachments to our family and to our parents and all these things, but there's real trauma there. You don't have to hold on to that attachment, right? You do
Mhm.
you and you do what's best for you and you redefine your storyline and you figure out, am I looking at this? Am I holding on to this just because they are my family? Sometimes your blood relatives shouldn't be. You shouldn't have any contact with them,
Yeah. Yeah.
depending on whatever the situation is, right? But it is your responsibility to stay in your lane and to say, okay, what am I doing for me? And what storyline can I attach here?
Yeah. You can't rewrite the stories
No.
that actually happen. You can't do that. But as you just described, you move on from that and say, okay, that is no longer my story. I can't rewrite it, and I'm not going to block it per se, because, and if I could go back in time, I wouldn't change it. Because if I went back in time and I changed it, then I'm not going to be the person I am today because of those experiences. Again, I would think that would be another one of those moments of being grateful, as hard as that might be.
Exactly.
Yeah. Trish Yan is my guest, and it is Pivotry, and it's the art of shifting as we continue here on Tell Me Your Story. I'm Richard Dugan, your host, and Trish, I want to thank you for giving us so much time and for your flexibility as well. We had to make a minor shift to get this conversation underway, and I thank you for that. I'm very appreciative. It's not always easy because a lot of times we have these schedules that we all have to meet and so forth. So thank you so much for doing that and for being here on Tell Me Your Story.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Well, I have 3 final questions that I ask all of my guests, and I'm going to ask those of you. But first, I want to thank you for listening to and watching Tell Me Your Story, New Paradigms for a New World, as we're giving you choices and knowledge of those choices to help make your dreams come true. We are here on Sundays at 7 a.m. and 7 p.m., Monday mornings at 1 a.m., and Monday through Friday from 8 to 9 a.m. That's 8 to 9 a.m., where you'll get 9 different programs throughout the week. And we certainly hope I get Saturday off, so to speak. That's my day of rest, if you will. And we certainly hope that you will listen to those programs because we stream live at those times at richarddugan.com. We also have podcasts of these programs, of these conversations at SoundCloud, iTunes, TuneIn Radio, Spotify, Stitcher, Player FM, Blueberry, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, and many other locations. And you can watch these conversations on YouTube. And we certainly hope that you'll subscribe as well as click notification so that the next conversation that's posted, you'll know about it and you can tune into it. We also ask that if you can support us financially, we would be gratefully appreciative. We have a PayPal account. It is there for your security as well as ours. And you'll use the email address they'll ask for, richard@richarddugan.com. That's richard@richarddugan.com. And then, of course, we ask that you spend some time going within and listening to that still small voice in that quiet, peaceful, calm, still place. I still love what one of my guests suggested, and that is making friends with the mind. The mind is more like a child than anything else. And saying, hey, you want to come along, but you have to be quiet. And we'll only be there a little while, and then we'll take all of that wonderful stuff that we got in that quiet time, and we'll work together to build and create. So I thought that was kind of a fun way of looking at whether you want to call it meditation or otherwise. So with all of that being said, we now move to our final 3 questions for our very special guest, the author of Pivotry, The Art of Shifting, available, of course, at TRYAdvisors. That's TRYAdvisors.com. First of those 3 questions is, who is Trish R. Yan?
Oh God, I have never been asked this question before. I am a mom. I am a new wife. I am a leadership coach. I am a sister. I'm an author. I'm an athlete. And I'm funny, and that's it.
Okay. What is it? You made reference to it earlier, but I'm going to ask you the question anyway. What is it that gets you up out of bed in the morning?
Seeing what the day is going to bring, what opportunities are going to be there, and who can I get an aha moment from? Those are the things those moments really feed me, and being able to help people really, really fills my soul.
And finally, what was your best day?
My most perfect day in the past or in the future?
However the answer comes to you.
I think, well, just recently I've been married. I just got married in June. And that was a pretty special day. Having been together for 12 years, we were married in Bermuda. It hadn't rained like that since the 1940s. And so we had to pivot. We had to practice the art of pivotry on the wedding day, but it was a really beautiful day. We had 100 guests and about 35 were my family. And so just having everybody in Bermuda in our happy place was, yeah, one of the most perfect days, actually. So
That's wonderful. Well, once again, I thank you so much for sharing with us, sharing with me this art of pivotry. And we look forward to having you back in the future to talk more about this and share some new insights that you may come across as we all move forward. So thank you again.
thanks, Richard. Have a good day.
And I thank you for listening to and watching Tell Me Your Story, New Paradigms for a New World, where we are giving you choices and knowledge of those choices to help make your dreams come true. Until our next broadcast, podcast, videocast. Love to Lal. Jeanette, I am still listening. Dad, continue to be happy because I am. Smokey, I will see you on the other side. And to my dear friend Zorro, aho, aho.